Thank you for pinning that, Fatster, while I was doing the other things. Okay. Okay. Sound, cooperate with me. It's just my headphones. Yeah. So, we have the Discord open thanks to Fatster's great work. And I am no longer away. Hopefully I don't ever crash again. I don't know what that was. I'll have to do investigating after this stream because I do plan on doing another stream tonight too. Here we go. The plan for this stream is to do random creepypasta stories. We've done that before. It'll be a spooky today. And then I was going to jump back into the fairy tales for the evening stream. And I will have the triggers list up for the evening stream again. I came back from my trip with a singing bowl so that it is it's available when we do the triggers tonight. I just haven't put things up because past reads people were, mostly happy with just chatting in between stories. But I will bring back the triggers for the evening one tonight. I'm gonna try out different things and hopefully keep growing my little audience here because it's been very fun and I'm very glad I'm back and I want to have more fun with all of you. Back. Yes, I'm hopefully properly going to stay this time. Oh, that's interesting, Fester. Yeah, you have to approve the emote attributions. Well, hopefully they're all attributed now properly. Okay. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm gonna have to do another one because I'm gonna have to attribute the dancing emote to you. I haven't put that one up yet, but I will do that. It's a very cute little emote. Dancing frog. Okay, because I restarted it, the stream, it's trying to start an ad again. I'm just going to run the ad and then we'll jump into our first spooky random story from Creepypasta. But I was wondering, since I'm trying to try out other things, I'm thinking today, it's the spooky and then it's the fairy tale, and I'll probably do the exact same thing tomorrow, and I'll have the trigger lists in between stories back for the fairy tales, but I thought not for the spooky ones. I don't know why, just because it's the earlier in the day and people aren't as sleepy and therefore they're maybe more up for chatting in between. But anything that you guys recommend, or if at any point you're like, actually I think you shouldn't do triggers or you should bring this triggers back, let me know. And then next week I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to either do origami hand cams or I will do spicy content that I will read in the afternoon stream, and then fairy tales in the evening. I'm just trying to do different kinds of stuffs and see how people like that. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. The very first. Oh, and Death Noah. I have the desk all set up, and I don't know if you can hear it. I can hear it. The little mouse is sliding around on the new textured of the desk. It's fun. Awesome. Thanks, Cage Nipman. Oh, you can't. Oh, I can do this. It's a different texture than the other desk, so it sounds different. It's fun. Okay, So the first story is called The Big One. And they are random generated creepypasta stories, so I don't know what kind of things will come up. You've been given your warning. The warning's been on screen the whole time. Yeah, let me know if we have specific things that we are. Let's come up with a different way to say that thing. I don't know. Okay. The Big One, written by Shannon Hidgen. The competitors of the 13th annual Superfish tournament, sponsored by the Angler Warehouse, could not have asked for a better day. Ooh. Oh, Tego, good to know. Well, I will try to speak slower so that you can definitely hear me. Sometimes I'll speak too fast. That's a thing I've been told with people that are English second language, I assume, because it's the first time you listen to stories in English. Anyway, okay. The competitors of the 13th annual Superfish tournament, sponsored by the Angler Warehouse, could not have asked for a better day. 75 degrees Fahrenheit and not a cloud in the sky. The competition was open to just about every type of fish that Lake Michigan had to offer. But when several large pumpkin seeds or rock carp counted the same as an average size sturgeon or catfish, the fishermen were always on the hunt for the big one. The teams consisted of no more than 2 to a fishing boat with a single outboard motor only. Most serious anglers, however, make little to no use of their motors, preferring the stealthier approach to their favorite spots that basic oars provided. Team Dan's Garage and Repo was no exception. That morning, however, the team consisted of just Dan, who, being a temperamental asshole on occasion, had alienated the rest of the team the night before at the bar. Too much tequila. He only hoped they would be back at work on Monday morning. There were well over 100 different boats headed out, with aspirations for the trophy and $10,000 grand prize. But the size of the Great Lake provided privacy for them all. 40 minutes after setting out, Dan could no longer see another boat. He could barely see the mainland shimmering on the horizon. He knew exactly where he was going, having the location saved on his GPS. It was the one spot where he always hit gold, in both volume and weight, bringing in both a 42-pound lake trout and a 39-pound muskellunge. Don't know that type of fish. 39-pound muskellunge from that location. Making anchor, baiting his line, and casting it, Dan reclined in his mounted chair and sighed. He was starting to feel bad about the way he had acted the night before with the guys. He couldn't actually remember all of what happened, but he remembered enough to know that he had been a king-size dick. It was probably nothing that giving everyone a little bonus wouldn't fix. He wasn't going to fixate on it. It was an amazing day, and if he were being honest with himself, fishing was something he preferred to do on his own anyway. It was true that the extra hands could have been useful for the tournament, but he still had 6 poles and 6 places to mount them on the sides of the boat. Once he got them all set, hopefully he would stay too busy to notice. The worst case scenario would be 2 lines hooking whoppers at the same time, but even then, Dan's fishing skills were up to the task. His father had been bringing him out on the lake since he was old enough to walk, and had a pole in his hands as soon as he was able to hold it. Fishing was all second nature and muscle memory. There were no abilities, save working a car engine, which he felt more confidence in. It took about 30 minutes to get all 6 lines out. Probably would have been quicker had 2 of the lines not been tied up with the roughies in the process, and, of course, they had to be thrown back. Not even worth the space they might take up. He hoped he hadn't parked in a school of them. When he got back to his seat, beer in hand, he checked his watch. Not quite 6 hours to go. "All right, fish," Dan informed them. "Let's get busy, shall we?" The first hour passed with relative disappointment, and although there was an 8-pound carp in the hold, Dan was contemplating a new location as inconceivable that might have been before he got there. This was, without a doubt, Murphy's Law in action. Throwing his third empty Coors bottle into the water and sighing for the way to maneth time. I don't know what that means. Sighing for the way to manyeth time? He reached for the GPS mounted at to the front of the dash. His hand never got there. The rear starboard line took off like a shot, whirring loudly. Whatever he had hooked was moving fast, and it was big. Yeah, that's right. I don't. It's spelled many, I-T-H, manyeth, but it's also way dash to dash many. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Oh, yeah. Okay. Whatever he had hooked was moving fast, and it was big. With jackal reflexes, Dan pounced on the pole and locked the spooling line into place. The pole nearly leapt from his hands. Yes, hell yes, Dan screamed at the lake. This was it. This was the big one. Half of his life, or more, had been spent on the water, and he had never hooked something this big. It was nearly impossible to reel it back, and had the anchor not been set, it would have dragged the boat. The rod itself, made from bamboo, was expensive, designed for deep-sea fishing. In theory, should have been able to bring in a shark, but whatever was on the other end was giving it all it could handle. Tego, it's many-ith, many-I-T-H. Maybe they were referring to that one? I don't know what it is, because it's this sighing for the way too manyth time. Oh, that's it. Oh my god. I just got it. Way too many. They wrote it wrong. They should have said, okay, I found the solution. What they wrote was way too manyth time. But what they meant was way too many if. Oh, many. Yeah, that's where they got me. The way to manyth. I was seeing like manyth with a capital M. The way to manyth. Anyway, okay, sorry. So, big something, very fancy fishing pole. It should be able to handle a shark, but this big thing is not coming in yet. Okay. Dan had never seen a pole snap in two before, until it happened. The reverberating shock from the break stung his hands, causing him to let go and watch as the shattered pole disappeared into the green water. "Son of a bitch," he exclaimed, throwing his stinging hands into the air in disgust. His opportunity to go down the annals of fishing lore as a legend had just swam away with one of his all-time favorite fishing poles. What the hell could that have been anyway? It felt larger than the Lake Michigan record, a 193-pound lake sturgeon. It felt like, of all things, a shark or something bigger, but of course that couldn't be possible. Despite the internet's pranksters' attempts to convince people otherwise, it was impossible for sharks, whales, squids, and all number of creatures to survive in the Great Lakes. Saltwater species just weren't designed for the freshwater bodies of water. Whatever it had been, it had ruined his day. Whether he won the tournament or not, there was no doubt in Dan's mind that he would never, ever forget the one that got away. He threw himself back into the captain's chair and grabbed another beer, utterly sickened with the turn of events. The alcohol never reached his lips. Another line, this time port side, whirred into frenetic action, much like the first. Dan jumped up and locked the reel, snapping the line to tautness and bending the rod to an unnatural angle. Leaving the pole in its mount, Dan spun around to grab his rubber gripping gloves from the tackle box. His hands had already paid to learn a lesson he wasn't keen to repeat. With adrenaline-fueled speed, Dan had the gloves on in seconds flat. Unfortunately, it was still too slow. The fishing pole's mount, which was drilled into the fiberglass hull of the boat itself, tore itself free. The pole, mount, and a small chunk of fiberglass vanishing into the lake before his shocked gaze. Gawking in disbelief, Dan's mind fighting to rationalize what the hell he had just seen, a third line began zipping away to his right. What the? He locked the line down and grabbed the handle in his gloved hands. There was no damn way he was losing another pole. He knew immediately that it was the same beast that had already stolen from him twice. It made no sense. Even if he had somehow managed to hook some mutated 500-pound sturgeon twice, it went against its primitive instincts to hang around in the same area. After getting away the first time, the son of a bitch should have been 100 miles away by now. Fish are primitive creatures which act on generations of repeated behaviors to dictate their actions. They're not capable of higher-level thought processes along the lines of revenge, but damned if the thought didn't go through Dan's mind as he battled against the beast. Behind him, another reel began to go, and it was a pretty good one, but nothing compared to what he had on the other end of the line in his hands. Instinctively, he removed one hand from the handle to lock the other line down for the time being, and that was all it took. Dan was a strong guy. He worked with his hands every day, and had even won a couple arm wrestling contests. Didn't seem to matter. The pole went flying from his one-handed grasp, and that was all she wrote. The stream of profanities that escaped his mouth could have set a Guinness Book record. Were such things rewarded? Sorry, the grammar there, I was like, what? Okay. The stream of profanities that escaped his mouth could have set a Guinness Book record were such things were rewarded. Fully aware that the screaming would most likely scare away any fish that might have still been in the vicinity, Dan was unable to restrain himself. It was the first time he ever longed for his shotgun while on the water. Still cursing, Dan reeled in the line that cost him his third pull, and the $4,000 they were all valued at. It popped out of the water about 10 yards away. It was a catfish, 25 or 30 pounds at least. It was a good catch, a really good catch. It was only a few feet away. Dan could see its blurry image struggling beneath the water when something massive came up from nowhere, absorbed his catch, and began to swim away. Dan had no choice but to give the thing some line, having already learned the hard way that he was no match for whatever that thing underneath him was. Hello, Darkstone Down. So far, so good. We had a crash for whatever reason, but we're back on track now. Okay. He managed to get the pole locked back into his mount on the boat and scrambled through the tackle box for his knife, just barely able to cut the line before it reached its end of 150 yards. He immediately shifted his attention to the two lines remaining in the water and cut them both. Whatever anomaly was down there, he was not prepared to catch it. He may have been a jerk sometimes, but he wasn't a dumb man, knowing when to throw in the towel. After getting his last 3 poles stowed away, Dan grabbed his cell phone and set it to record video. desperately wanting to get some type of footage. No one was going to believe him. Shifting from side to side, front and back, he held the device over the water and strained to see something, anything. The water was a beautiful greenish teal, but murkier than usual, as if something were stirring up huge amounts of sediment. Occasionally, a massive shadow would pass by, but it had to be some natural combination of the sunlight and the water because it was way, way too big to be something that could live in the freshwater Great Lakes. If Dan were to believe that the dark shape in the water was whatever that thing was, then it would easily be the size of his tow truck. Sure, there are creatures in the ocean, deep in the ocean, that archive that kind of mass, but for Lake Michigan, it would have to be something like Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, a semi-mythical, possibly prehistoric, widely doubted, aquatic animal of questionable origins. Glad you're officially joining us, Cage Nightwind. Maybe he'd be famous for discovering the Lake Michigan monster. It did have a nice ring to it. Seeing the hazy shadow, Dan jumped to the front of the fishing boat, really only a glorified dinghy, and leaned over the water as far as he safely could. Suddenly, a thunderous crashing and ripping noise blasted out from the rear of the boat, simultaneous to the boat itself violently jerking port side and nearly capsizing in the process. Dan's guardian angel somehow kept it upright, but not before a number of contents spilled out, including his cell phone. He ended up needing both hands to grasp the boat and keep from going into the water as well. Dan waited for the rocking to cease before peeling himself from the waterlogged bottom of the boat and turning to see what the hell had just happened. What greeted him at the rear of the boat was like nothing he could have imagined, even in his nightmares. His 6-horsepower Mercury outboard motor was gone, completely torn away from the boat's hull, taking a substantial chunk of the boat with it. A U-shaped hole now sat where the motor once was, water splashing into the boat over the gap, and Dan was once again frozen into immobility. How could something like this even be possible? What sort of thing was even capable of the inconceivable devastation just waylaid on the biggest love in his life, the Jenny Sue? The original Jenny Sue had left his life nearly 20 years ago, but that boat never strayed, always remaining faithful, and now she was... Oh God, Dan gasped, feeling as helpless as a child. He wanted to know what to do, wanted to jump into action, but none of his skills and experience had prepared him for this. About to take a step towards the destruction in some meager attempt at evaluation, Dan was knocked to his knees again. The Jenny Sue jerked forwards again and began gliding through the water with more speed than should have been possible with her motor gone. Gripped with fear, it took Dan several terrifying seconds to discover the source of the propulsion, except he wasn't being propelled, he was being pulled. Something with strength that shouldn't have been possible had taken hold of the anchor and chain and was pulling the boat to an unknown destination. Water splashed over the sides and rear, soaking him and causing a shiver despite the warmth of the day. His brain felt locked by panic, and it was only by some miracle that he remembered the emergency release for the anchor, which would disattach the chain from the vessel entirely. Felt like slow motion as he fought the growing momentum and made his way to release the latch in the front. He pulled the latch and Jenny Sue slowly cruised to a stop as the chain rattled off its spool and into the deep. Dan fell back into his seat with a huge sigh of relief and reached for a beer. They were gone. Of course, Dan surveyed the disaster that he once considered his most reliable vehicle. It was nearly unbelievable. He would have been unbelievable had he not just lived through the attack. No one else would believe him. The Boy Scout began to slowly take control, and Dan scanned the horizon. Land could not be seen in any direction, and the sun was directly overhead to boot, so it would give no indication of the direction he needed to go for another hour at least. At least he still had the GPS mounted on the hull. Dan grabbed it and peered down at the screen. It was still working. In the quick moment that it took for his middle-aged eyes to adjust their focus, a loud splash could be heard from behind him. Dan spun in his seat just in time to see the 2-foot algae-covered anchor and thick chain coming down through the air and hooking itself on the rear of the hull, onto the side of the gap where the motor once was. The second it became hooked, the chain went taut and the boat was in motion again, except in the wrong way this time, resulting in a much choppier ride. It was a struggle to stay aboard and make his way back to the anchor, the boat nearly tipping twice with his weight, shifting towards the rear. Desperately trying to grasp the firmly hooked anchor, his hands kept slipping off the slimy metal. Fear had every nerve in his body tingling. He didn't want to die here. He wasn't even wearing a life jacket, for heaven's sake. Even if you're a long-experienced fisher, you should be wearing a life jacket on every boat. Okay. Dan heard a slight cracking noise beneath the splashing waters, drawing his attention to the small but expanding fissures in the fiberglass beneath the anchor. Jenny Sue was beginning to pick up real speed as the front of the boat bounced violently up and down on the water, higher and higher each time. There was no way he would stay upright much longer. Bracing his back against the base of the seat, Dan began kicking the anchor. The cracks got larger and larger, and just as the boat reached a vertical position, 90 degrees from the plane of the water, Dan was able to shatter the portion of the hull that had been caught, sending the anchor zipping into the water. Jenny Sue came crashing down on the water with a thud, the momentum bringing it to a complete stop. Gasping for air, teetering on the verge of hyperventilation, Dan had never been so terrified in his entire life. When he was 10 years old, Dan had walked in on an argument between his mom and her boyfriend at the time, Frank. They didn't stay together for long, and that moment was the reason why. Frank liked to use his mother as a punching bag, and on that particular day, after seeing his mother lying on the floor and bleeding from the mouth, Dan decided he'd had enough. Attacking Frank with all the hatred and fury that a child could muster, the end result was his being nearly choked to death. Frank would have killed Dan had his mother not clocked him from behind with a frying pan. In the moments it took for Frank to gather his senses, his mother got them out of the house and called the police. The fear he felt then, and the weeks subsequent to Frank's release from jail, were the bar by which he would measure every scary moment in his life. No matter what terrible thing might happen, he could always tell himself, at least it's not as bad as that day in the kitchen with Frank. Until now. This shit blew everything he ever knew about fear out of the water. Heart pounding its way out of his chest, sweat mingling with lake water, he had never known such distress could exist. It was beyond anything his mind could easily digest. Before he had any semblance of a chance to calm his nerves, a familiar splash came from behind him somewhere. Dan closed his eyes and prayed, "Please, God, just make it go away." For the moment, his prayer was answered by the loud clank of metal on fiberglass as the anchor glanced off the port side of Jenny Sue. The ricochet's vibration was the jolt Dan needed to break free from his anxiety-induced state of catharsis. Do they know what catharsis means? Anyway. Gripping the captain's chair, he got to his knees and strained his neck to scan the area. It seemed calm. He had to get out of there or it was going to kill him. Catharsis is spelled with a C. And it's not a good use of the word. Yeah. No, it's fine if you spell it wrong. It's just if you're gonna Google it, you should have the right spelling, that's all. Yeah, weird. I mean, maybe they intended catharsis? I don't think they did. Anyway. He had to get out or it was gonna kill him. With trembling hands, he reached for the oars strapped to the side of the boat. It was the only way he was going anywhere now. The splash came again, and Dan spun his head to see the anchor shooting up into the air and then arching back down towards the boat. This time it made better contact, hooking one of its 3 inverted prongs into the plastic fishing pole holder mounted to the edge of the boat. Instantly it was pulled tight again, but instead of dragging the boat, it merely ripped the pole-holding piece of plastic from the boat. Dan fumbled for the oars again. This was getting desperate. He managed to free one when the splash came from directly in front of him. This time he saw the piece of metal eject itself from the still water like a rocket. It was going higher each time. He watched it intensely as it curved in the air and came right at him. With masterful precision, the anchor lodged itself on the side of the boat right in front of him. Dan's mind was working a little quicker now, and he realized 2 things right off the bat. The thing would start pulling again, and with the anchor hooked on the side of the boat, it wouldn't be going very far before flipping or just breaking into pieces. The second thought, amazingly enough, was even more disturbing than the first. The way the anchor and chain had sailed through the air, it was familiar. It resembled the way his own fishing line hooked when he cast it out into the body of water. Whatever it was, he was not fishing for it. It was fishing for him. He was the big one, and it seemed he would not be getting away. The end. And that was the big one. It had 4 votes of 10 out of 10. I think it was pretty good. It was spooky. We had some sort of cryptid, the Lake Michigan monster. That's fine. But a couple of little things that just set me off every time. Yeah, it's fun though. More stories from that author. There's a bunch of different things. Looks like one's based on face huggers. Like Alien. And lots of other fun things. But, okay. Too many of the, Okay. Cage Night Wind. What's the question? I'm gonna just click the random story and prep that next. I won't tell you all yet what it is while I wait for the question. Oh, yes. Do. Where's that tab? Sure, let's go look at Discord. I forgot that I meant to put up photos of my crochet. I didn't do that yet. That's supposed to go in there. Okay. I'm checking all the other things. Cool. People are here and chatting. Were y'all chatting? Yeah, you were chatting. Okay. And art. They're so cute with the little frogs behind me. That's great. Cage Night Wind. I love it. Okay. Look at those little frogs. They don't have purple bellies. They're natural frogs. They're the real ones that are in the lake. my little frogs with their purple tongues. They're not well. if they were properly real. I love it. It is the first fan art. I need to like Mr. Krabs puts his first money from business. I should put my little first fan art somewhere. I have to, when I'm planning on doing this, I have to put up the artist acknowledgement soon. But it's Olivia on Etsy that I got this from. The antlers and the model, and I just customize colors. Ooh, what is it? I don't know what it is. What is that roll called? I don't know how to find that. I don't know things. What are rolls? A forest denizen. That's cute. I like it. It's good. Okay. I think it's a good one. We can keep it. What was my brain? Oh yeah. As well as I got the backgrounds that I use, and I'll put those up. I have intentions. I had wanted to have this all done and put it up on my about section on Twitch, but I haven't done it yet because as soon as I got back, everyone everywhere was like, "Don't you have to do this thing now?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, okay, fine." Instead of getting to you guys, because unfortunately, this does not pay me like some of that other stuff does, and also like just living is kind of, you have to do this clean, you have to do that organization so that you do not live in a literal swamp. But swamps are nice. I mean, I can't properly bash swamps. Okay. Thank you, Keisha. I mean, you didn't have to wait at all, but that is so great. I love it. I need to post my little crochets because I said that I would show you guys. And I have photos of them. I did a little mini like photo shoot before I gave them to the people that wanted them. But you get me, Tetra. You're just like slowly going through all of the cleaning. There's too much. Yes. Okay. I would tuck that away. And this one is interesting. The title has quotes. Yes. All right. Yeah. Whenever you're living with other people, I think it's a really good way to like force you to do more cleaning. But yeah. It's one thing about when you don't live with other people that you can end up not doing the cleaning that you intended to do. Oh yeah, the full clean. Ugh. Sometimes I need those like body doubles, someone else to be around just to make sure I actually do all the stuff. Okay, I have to just take a quick break, little thing, and then I will be back with the next one, and it's called You've Seen the Butcher. There's even thumbnail art, but I don't see it. I don't see where the thumbnail art is. Because like the credits, it says thumbnail art by, but I see no thumbnail art. Anyway. Okay. But this one, it sounds very fun. And I will be back very quickly. I promise. just got back and I I took a second where I was just reading your comments instead of joining again. Oops, sorry. But that sucks, Cage Nightwind. I hope you get luck with like sorting out a better system for dealing with work and getting the maintenance and cleaning done. And Pet Story, yeah, honestly, I could probably end up getting a friend to do that regularly for me, and then that would clean my apartment. Okay. So, as I said, the next story is You've Seen the Butcher. We'll do that. We'll show that now. There you go. And yeah. Sometimes you just gotta pick something else and things will go easier after that. Good luck with it. Get out of the people that are just annoying and difficult then. Okay. You've Seen the Butcher. Ooh. So I guess this is written as like, oh, I don't know. This is written kind of interesting. It starts with, if you're listening to this. And so I don't know what this will be. Okay. Hello. If you're listening to this, then I've been found, and there will be questions. Oh yes, questions aplenty. I'm sure the first of which will be why, and that is a great one to start with, but it's also the one which doesn't have an answer. Not a satisfactory answer, anyway, at least to most people. I can explain what happened, but I don't think you'll find meaning in the sequence of events. I had no childhood trauma, no deep-rooted anger, issues involving either of my parents. They were kind, loving people. So, I will give you the simplest answer I can. Here's a glimpse between my gears as they turn against each other, grinding and shedding the little shavings of metal that stick in me like thorns. There's a catalyst to everything I've done. Wet leaves and meat. That's the smell. Whenever I get the urge, it makes way into my sinuses, making the hairs in my nose stand up and tickle me. I used to work in a cubicle. It doesn't matter what I did there. No more than it matters what you do at your job, because jobs don't matter, not really. A 6x6 square was my entire world for hundreds of hours every year. I ate lunch at my desk most days to avoid the office break room. I was never very good at small talk, and too much human interaction makes me tired. It was a day, just a day. Nothing special about it at all. I finished my sad microwave meal and stared at my monitor, imagining I could see the individual pixels there, and I was just gone. The monitor changed to a blinding white like the sun reflecting off sand dunes. I watched through squinted eyes as stark black letters materialized. Feed disconnected, it read. And it was. A plug was pulled inside of me like someone tugging on my intestines, and I was no longer a part of the world, and the smell wafted in. Slimy black leaves slipping through the teeth of a rake, and the coppery tang of a butcher's back room. I floated, not literally of course. Sorry, guys. I floated, not literally, of course. I'm not crazy, but nothing held my consciousness anymore. Whatever machinations keep us within our bodies, those tethers were gone. I was unbound. I stood on shaking legs and left my cubicle, only bothering to grab my keys and wallet. I drifted then. I know it was early afternoon when I left, but the next I remember it was night, and my feet were sore from walking. I can't explain what happened in those walking hours. There was nothing supernatural about it. My feed was disconnected. I eventually found myself outside of a bar near the bridge downtown. I walked in, and the smell assaulted me. Wet leaves and meat. I slipped between people, navigating through the crowd with my nose in the air. I felt like a bloodhound, and in a sense, I guess that's what I was. She sat at a low table near the back, behind a warped pool table, its dull balls all gathered in one corner. The closer I got, the stronger the smell became, overpowering the scent of cigarettes and spilt beer. I sat opposite her and gave her what I hoped was a charming smile. Here's the thing about being disconnected. Free from the pull of any emotional tides, you can act any part. I was charming, the absolute soul of wit and grace. I introduced myself and asked if she would like some company. She was surprised, but she said yes anyway. That was Julia. Everyone knows everything about her now, but she was just a stranger to me that night. I didn't know she was there to drown the thoughts of her husband and his mistress. I didn't know she was upset about turning 45 that week. I didn't know she had a kid in college and one in high school. But understand this, it wouldn't have changed the outcome if I had known. She was marked by the smell coming off her in waves. After a few more drinks and some increasingly arousing conversation, we slipped out the back door and into the shadowed alleyway. She was all over me in an instant, a starving animal. I could feel her lust, her middle-aged desperation. I could almost hear her thoughts through her urges. Feel me, listen to me, fuck me, love me, love me, love me, please. I listened, then led her out of the alley. We walked on the street, the overhead lights a baleful orange. When the smell became stronger, I knew we'd arrived. A building closed for renovation, its windows covered with plywood. I reached my hand through a crack and pried up a corner, then pulled the wood away enough for us to fit through the gap. She giggled as I laid her down upon the unfinished floor. The smell of sawdust was almost strong enough to cover the smell of rot. I felt nothing for her, not lust and not love. The way her tongue in my mouth was meat. The feel of her tongue in my mouth was meat. The smell of her breath was mold, but my body still responded appropriately. Now this is when it was all clear. As I reached into my pocket and drew the knife, and where had that come from? The world came into clarity for a brief second. I could see everything. The dark didn't matter, and the colors were an epiphany. The yellow caution tape was a solar flare, the red of a toolbox, the heart blood of the universe. We began our dance of flesh, our exchange of momentum, and the smell grew stronger, and I stabbed her through the neck. And as her movements grew weaker, the world grew brighter. I was real again, connected. She collapsed to the floor, her head to the side, her eyes on me, and the smell was gone, or at least it had retreated. I let go of her hair and withdrew from her. I stood up, my hand slick with her blood. It was warm, and it was life, and it was reality. Welcome, we love you. In the middle of a very dark story here. Within a few breathless moments, it became darker, the light and color bleeding away. And then the world was like me, black and empty. I would say that I was stunned, but I didn't feel much of anything but loss. But I knew then, I knew that if I wanted to be real again, then I would have to work, to sacrifice. A week went by. I sat in my apartment staring at nothing, just floating along. I eventually turned off my cell phone. The constant calls from work and family were filling my voicemail box, and I found it irritating, like sand between my teeth. In the in-between of nothing, just hovering in the dark, I knew things. I knew that I had to create a trail that wasn't a trail, a chaotic straight line. I had to plan, not just hit bars for married women desperate for attention. I had to branch out. But I shouldn't have worried about it. The smell always drew me to where I needed to be. It came back, flowing beneath my front door. I quickly grabbed my keys and headed out. I drove with my window down to make following the trail easier. My head stuck out of it, flicking my tongue like a sniffing snake. After half an hour, I began to have doubts, but soon enough the smell grew overpowering. I turned into the drive of an apartment complex, following the scent until I was parked in front of one of the buildings in the very back. I cut the engine, then picked the hammer up from the passenger seat. Why a hammer? Because the last time I used a knife. A chaotic, straight line. Can you see it? Perfectly straight with beautiful corners. There was a young man smoking a cigarette outside of his apartment. The acrid smoke and the wet leaves and the meat all mixed. I felt dizzy. He saw me and raised an eyebrow, then asked if I was the one Smitty had sent. I nodded and smiled as if I knew who Smitty was or why he was sending someone. Then he listed the prices of various drugs he offered, which I knew nothing about. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I asked if we could go inside to discuss it. He nodded and led me in, tossing his cigarette onto the sidewalk and crushing it beneath his heel without losing his stride. It was a small place, almost devoid of furniture, with water stains on the ceiling. He gestured absently towards his roommate, a skinny, bearded man wearing a headset. He was deep into some video game, his thumbs clicking and clacking across the buttons of the controller. I'm sure he saw a battle, a quest, or a puzzle. I only saw a white screen with establishing connection in black letters. He went to his bedroom and he introduced himself as Brian. I told him flatly that I didn't care and pulled out a $20 bill, tossing it down to the filthy carpet. I could tell he was angry, that the disrespect burned him like acid, but he said nothing. He lifted the corner of the mattress and grabbed his stash slowly, as if he were in a dream, a nightmare he couldn't escape. I was close to the truth. He just didn't know that I was his way out. I drew the hammer from behind my back where I had hidden it beneath my shirt, the handle firmly tucked into my jeans. I put my free hand on top of his head and told him to look up at me. He did and watched me raise the hammer. The look in his eyes was one of detached resignation, like he knew what this was, what I was. Brian continued to stare at me even as I brought the hammer down. His skull cracked audibly, and a fine spray of blood from his scalp landed on the nearest wall in dots and swirls and patterns, and, oh dear God, it was geometry and secrets. I was real, and I swung the hammer again. Brian fell backwards, his legs folded beneath him. I dropped down to my knees beside him, my face hovering inches over his own. I inhaled deeply, and it was sweet and pungent, like caramelized onions on a hot skillet. I reveled in the real. The moonlight was silver waves pouring through the window, cold and beautiful, and I was an alien shore for it to crash against. I see you, Butcher, the moonlight said. I see you well. There came a noise from behind me, and there stood the roommate, his mouth slack with surprise. Can you imagine? You walk in and see your friend on the floor, his head a ruin of pulp and shards and bone, and above him stands a strange man in the moonlight with a dripping hammer. It's comical, really. When I think about it, I hear a laugh track, like on an old sitcom, the ghostly recordings of people long dead and laughing. I moved quickly, swinging the hammer at his face. But for all of his shock, he reacted faster than I anticipated. The hammer struck his raised arm, cracking his bones and making him screech. I threw myself at him, sending us both falling to the floor. He covered his head with his arms. The blow was meant to be a mercy, to end it quickly, but instead it drove his lips into his mouth and crushed the teeth behind them. His scream was a garbled mess of bubbling, red noise and teeth particulate that reminded me of a trumpet, although I couldn't tell you why. It kept swinging until he stopped moving. Well, most of him stopped moving. His heels continued to drum against the floor for a full 30 seconds, but I wasn't counting. I like the little popcorn you guys are doing. Yeah, sorry, they're screaming out there. The sirens, not people. Although the story would suggest that. Okay. His scream was a garbled mess of bubbling red noise and teeth particulate. Right, okay. I rolled off him and onto the hard floor of the hallway. I could see my pulse in my eyes, explosion after explosion bringing colors from the ceiling. Bursts of fireworks, of starlight, of the light of creation. I was the center of gravity. I was the fulcrum. Planets revolved around me, and in that moment of elation, I collapsed into sleep. My dreams were sweet and syrupy. Oh my gosh, you just fall asleep right there. Oh my gosh. Okay. My dreams were sweet and syrupy, and I could feel the juice of them run down my chin as I bit and chewed and swallowed. I devoured my dreams with the selfishness only a god can feel. When I awoke, I was, well, I guess the best way I can describe it was hungover. I was disconnected, of course, and sluggish. My head pounded and my arm ached from exertion. I lifted myself slowly, and the tacky blood pulled at my shirt like the hook of a drunken fisherman. My knees threatened to buckle, but I willed them to be stable. I tucked the hammer away and left the apartment. Outside, the sunlight stung my eyes and turned my stomach. Being unreal didn't stop physical discomfort, but it dulled it. I believe now that I was still at least slightly real that morning. I had ascended the night before. I evolved. For a brief time, I held the cosmos in my hand, and it was putty to be shaped. I had made 2 sacrifices, given 2 over to the rot, and I had been rewarded with godhood. If 2 had made me a god, what would 3 do? I passed a young boy sitting astride his bike. I raised my bloody hand in a wave and dropped him a sly wink and a grin. He slowly got his feet on the pedals and rode off, turning his head to watch me as he went. He shouldn't have worried. I'd never hurt a child. I'm not a monster. Weeks passed and my divinity drained from me like piss. I was disconnected enough to be inconsequential again. Julie's death had gone through a short news cycle, and Brian's and whatever the roommate's name was, they had their time in the low-budget spotlight of the local news as well. Neither of the crime scenes had been connected in any way, and why would they? One was a stabbing in a construction area downtown. The other was a bludgeoning in a half hour past the suburbs in the apartment of a drug dealer. But I kept my head down anyway, stayed inside, blended into the shadows in my hall closet where I was sleeping. The scent of bleach and fabric softener soothed me in the absence of rotten leaves and meat. When the smell came back, I would have cried in relief if I was connected and could feel. It attacked my nostrils like an invading swarm of parasites, filling me with rot, with rank, fecund darkness. I don't know this one. Fecund, fecund, darkness. I was ready. I followed the trail. I drove around for hours until past dark. Headlights coming from the opposite direction screamed at me as they passed. Thank you, Fitster. Their bright shine passing through me because I wasn't really there. The smell drifted maddeningly close, only to retreat again. My bloodless knuckles popped as I squeezed the steering wheel tighter. Reality withdrawal was seeping in. It had to have been because I was getting angry, beyond angry. I lunged forward and bit the steering wheel hard, sinking my teeth into the soft plastic and shaking my head back and forth like a dog. My gums began to bleed. I could taste it on my tongue. I drew my head back and stared at myself in the rearview mirror. Blood dripped from between my lips and the reflection was dark and I couldn't see my eyes, but they must have been there because I could see my crimson teeth smiling back at me. And I was parked in someone's driveway. I don't remember how I ended up there. I didn't even know where I was. It was a ranch-style house, dusty red with cream-colored shutters that reminded me of my teeth. Half hidden in the shadows of the passenger footwell was the hammer. It was black with old blood and what looked like curds, but was secretly something else, I was sure of it. I reached across the seats and grabbed the handle and picked it up. It looked at me and I looked at it and we both nodded in some unspoken agreement that I didn't understand, but it seemed good enough for the hammer. Interesting. Sorry. Ooh, I lost myself. Fully. I'll be a second. I walked up the sidewalk, lined with flower beds. The door was lit by a single bulb surrounded by a tempest of moths and squiggles that blurred when I tried to focus on them. I pushed the button nearby and could hear the chime of the doorbell echoing in the house. No answer, so I pressed it again. An older man opened the door a few inches and looked at me with eyes half closed against the brightness of the bulb. I smiled at him and could feel the sticky blood between my lips and watched his eyes widen right before I swiftly shouldered my way past him and into the house. I shut the door behind me. The man had fallen on his back hard and was gasping for breath. I fell upon him, straddling his chest and swinging the hammer like a conductor's baton, swift, fluid motions that felt choreographed. Like I was a puppet made to dance, a wooden, unreal boy. But when the hammer connected and I felt the vibration of the blow travel up my arm, the gates opened and I was plugged in. I could smell fear in the urine that spread out from beneath him. I resisted the urge to lengthen my neck muscles and strike forward with my head like a viper. I wanted to bite him, to clamp down and pull, but didn't because I may be a god, but I'm not an animal. A soft voice that was probably his wife's called from the hall, and I ran toward it, swinging the hammer with abandon, not even bothering to aim. And I think I was screaming, but it might have been the woman or no one. I didn't even know what I was hitting. She was just a mass of flesh in the dark, and I was the hammer, and I pounded her. Blood rained down in hot sprinkles on my face like sparks from a welder's torch. A drop landed in my eye, and I blinked, and I wondered that if there had been light to see by, would I have seen the world in red for just a second. The heap on the floor was meat, and I was not. I was celestial. The dark was pushed back, and I could see everything clearly. The woman was awful in a nightgown. Overripe fruit that had fallen from a tree and burst. I sensed a heartbeat from further down the hall, and I walked through the mess and felt it squishing between my toes. And it was hot, and I realized I hadn't worn shoes. A door stood half open, and I used my hammer to push it farther, the wet metal leaving a thin trail of blood on the wood. There was another woman here. Edith, the man's mother. I knew that then, or I know that now, I don't know which. She was lying in bed, illuminated by a TV showing static, looking at me with rheumy eyes. I took the last few steps to stand by her side, and my hands were shaking. She asked me in a whisper if I were him, and I said I didn't know, but I might be. It was hard to say. Edith reached her frail arm up and grasped my hand, and her skin was like tissue paper. She squeezed my hand, and I raised the hammer in my other one, and she whispered that it was okay. I felt the universe pull away from me, hooked and reeled in by her whisper. I swung just once, and the hammer went through her skull, and I felt nothing but confusion. There was no revelation, no epiphany, and on the white screen of the TV, the word disconnected stood 4 inches tall in bold black letters. I ran. That was some time ago. Time is funny in my hall closet, and I'm not sure of the date now. Eons may be passing as I sit here, talking into my phone, recording this for a reason that I used to know but I've forgotten. There could be dinosaurs walking down my street right now, causing potholes with their thunderous feet. But I wouldn't know. The universe may have reached the limits of its expansion, and has now snapped back like a rubber band, reversing time on its course to collapse in on itself once again. All is quiet here. All is quiet here. All is still. My phone has a tiny light, slowly changing from green to red. It blinks at me. Its charge is running out. And I want to cry because I know exactly what it feels like. My empathy for my phone's light is complete and all-consuming. We're both blinking, and we'll both die, but I don't know which of us will go first. Now you've seen the butcher, and when the god of rot and stench consumes me, when he breaks me down to my tiniest elements, I will be reborn as his avatar, his son, a walking statue of fly-blown meat, and then you've seen the butcher, and when I return, I'll see you too. The end. A very dark story. Yes. Oh, wow. Okay. What did we think of that one? Clap. Just slow single clap. Good use, yeah. Alternate use, very good. Either one. Either one works. They're both using their little froggo hands to their face. Shocked. Whatever that shock may be. Wow. They had some fun words. I like to take note, and so I can double check the pronunciation for next time if I see it again. But yeah, thank you for Petster for saying that it meant fertile, but I will still be Googling it later for pronunciation. I don't want to sound stupid later. So that was... You've seen the butcher? Oh. I realized I didn't write down the titles. The other one was The Big One, right? That one's very straightforward. You don't think this one? I think it's very possible you just haven't seen it yet. But, okay. Those ones are set. Wow. We're feeling the spooky. The last one was, creepy, but this one is just, wow. We never know. With these random stories, they'll be what they'll be. Yes. Yeah. No, you're right. It's a very good point. I would never be thinking that someone was stupid just because it's a new word for them, so why do I put that on me? Yay! We're continuing the subs. Thank you. We're moving into the next month. We need the renewing, I guess. Oh, jeez. Have I been here a month now? Yes and no, because I was gone for a chunk. But anyway. Okay. I hate... You heard 10% of the second story? Was that because I was, it was hard to understand, or just like you were gone? What was it? If we need to fix that, we will do that. Tell me what I need to do. Tego. Oh, you weren't here. Okay. Because I was like, there were some fun words. If you want me to explain some of the things, I usually will do that. Okay. Alright. Awesome. The next story, we have to sort that out. The next one is called I Stole My Stories. Here we go. Jumping right into it. Because we need to kind of shake off that last story. It was just excessively dark. Do people usually not say Tego? I'm curious now. Dance. Okay, cool. It's always a guess. It is when you don't know things. It's just the way of reading. I lucked out. I could have said any version of the pronunciation, but I got it that one. Okay. Oh, sorry. See, I guessed wrong before. Alright, here we go. I Stole My Stories, written by Kitty, the Odd Cat Lady Olsen. That's what they put here. Her name is Kitty Olsen, or their name is Kitty Olsen, and then the Odd Cat Lady. Not old, odd. Interesting name. I'm excited. Okay. My name is Andrew Thames, and I'm nothing more than a slimy thief. I used to call myself a writer. I can't say I ever wrote anything worth it. Despite years and years of work, poring over my laptop, sending submission after submission, I had almost nothing to show for it. The only money in my pocket came from working the drive-thru at a cheap fast food place known for its yellow arches. Classic. And now I want to pause the story at I can't always say it fast. I like hear it in my head, I think, the right way, but I don't know. Tetrahedragon. Tetrahedragon? What kind of emphasis is on that one? I want to know now. I have to interrupt this. We're all waiting. We're thinking, at least. Tetrahedron. Yeah, that's... Because then it still sounds like... Oh my gosh, my brain, I don't even know. Yeah. Tetrahedron. Yes, that's the word that my brain is. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So it has to have the same emphasis. Emphasis. You can't put it somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. We had the little spiral off to the side. I'll go back onto the point. They did a vague reference to McDonald's. All right. I lived with a fellow writer, Yasmina Abel. Yasmina was a real writer. She didn't have to work a shitty minimum wage job where there was always a risk of someone throwing their drink at me because it had too much ice. She could really make a decent living off her writing. She didn't even have to ask for jobs sometimes. The people she'd worked for in the past came to her. It wasn't fair. She told me it took her years to develop the contracts she did, but it's not like I wasn't working hard too. I spent every night working on my new stories. But where I got rejections, she got accepted. When we originally moved in together, we were actually quite good friends. We had been ever since sharing a high school creative writing class. I admired her natural flair for describing colors and how she would set a scene. She said she liked my witty one-liners and how easy it was to relate to my characters. I'm not sure if she really meant it, but it felt nice at the time. I suppose the reason we stopped being friends was my fault. I mean, she didn't have to shove her success in my face all the time, but I was jealous, incredibly so. It felt like she was being favored over me. And maybe she was by fate, by publishers, by podcasts. We used to have breakfast together almost every morning. By the end of it, I couldn't stand to be in the same room with her. She was hurt, and I now know she had every right to. But I had a bad workday when I returned to the apartment. That's when she cornered me, demanding that we talk. I didn't want anything to do with her, so I tried to leave. She followed me out into the walkway and told me to stop acting like a child. It was an accident. I tell myself it was an accident. I could never intentionally hurt someone, but I was tired. I smelled like chicken nuggets and burnt French fries. I'd been screamed at, my job had been threatened, and I just didn't want anything to do with Yasmina. So I pushed her. Not hard. Just wanted her to leave me alone. But she tripped, and she fell down the stairs. I heard her crack, and then she was still at the bottom of the stairs. She wasn't moving. Maybe she was still breathing then. I don't know. I didn't check. I just went back into the apartment and went to bed. I didn't think she was really that hurt. I especially didn't expect her to be dead. A few hours later, I was woken up by sirens. Cops knocked on my door, told me it looked like my roommate had tripped and fallen down the steps, broken her neck. Bad luck, they said. Maybe they just couldn't be bothered to investigate further. That was the first and only stroke of luck I've had since Yasmina died. So that's concerning, but I gotta say, how did they know? How did they know to be there? Who called them? Someone would have seen. I don't know. Okay. She didn't really have much in the way of family. Her funeral was empty of blood relatives, just friends in attendance. Yeah, they said they followed her to the walkway, so I guess someone saw or found, but like, if it was that public, you'd think you could be concerning that someone would also have seen? I don't know. Maybe not. Ah, okay. You're probably right. Hello, Ingress. Welcome to the chat. She didn't really have much in the way of family. Her funeral was empty of blood relatives, just friends in attendance. I was the one who delivered her eulogy, feeling like it was ashes in my mouth. Every time told me how sorry they were, I wanted to barf. I just nodded. People blamed my silence on my grief. They weren't wrong, just not entirely right either. I went home after the service. I felt numb. I'd gotten away with murder, accidental or not. I didn't know what else to do, so I started going through Yasmina's things. Some things to send to her other friends, some things to donate, some things to just pitch into the dumpster. And then I found her laptop. It was there. I found her stories. All of them. Nope. And then I found her laptop. I skipped. At first I figured I'd just wipe the drive and sell it so I could hopefully afford rent for a few months. I knew the password like she knew my passwords. It was there that I found her stories. All of them. Of course, she had more time for writing. She didn't have to go to work. She could just wake up and be at her keyboard, her fingers flying away as she penned another award-winning short tale. She could write all she wanted. I told myself that I was just going to read through them, just to see what she'd been working on before I shoved her down the stairs. Maybe I could even glean some inspiration from her. Those excuses didn't last long. She had a dozen stories still unpublished, good ones too, and a trilogy of novels that were all but finished in the editing department. I needed to get something quality out, otherwise I could kiss my apartment goodbye and go back to living with my overbearing parents. That was the last thing I wanted. So I copied the stories to a flash drive before I wiped her laptop's hard drive, removing any existence of the stolen stories. I ended up selling it for $200 on eBay. I then copied the stories onto my own Google Drive, tweaked a few words here and there, and then I began submitting them. It was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I did it. I didn't kill Yasmina for her stories, that I promise you. I didn't plan to kill her. How could I have chosen to steal her stories before then? But fate seemingly dropped a present in my lap. I couldn't say no to a chance like this. What do you know? It actually worked. It wasn't a publishing house, it was a podcast. But the guy in charge was real friendly. He told me he loved every word and set me up with a regular writing job, starting with a story I took from Yasmina. Finally, I was getting paid for writing. It just wasn't mine to sell. I know that now for sure. It was a week after I sent the second of Yasmina's stories off in my name. I treated myself to fast food that night and was walking up the steps with it when it felt cold, really cold. I stopped for a second to see if someone came in after me, but all I was feeling was just a cold breeze from the open door. There was nobody there. I turned forward and at the top of the stairs I saw Yasmina. She was wearing the dress she had been in when they buried her. But she wasn't caked in the makeup a corpse is for an open coffin. Her face was pale, nearly gray. Her eyes, filled with anger, stared at me, and her head was tilted and almost sitting on her shoulder, like her black and blue neck unable to support its weight. She was there only a few seconds. Jesus. DewOnTheGrass. Thanks. Like her black and blue neck unable to support its weight. She was there only a few seconds staring at me, and when I blinked she was gone. The hallway was the temperature it always was, but I now felt colder than ever. I didn't eat dinner that night. I tossed the bag into the trash and hid in my room, convincing myself it was all in my head. I didn't believe it then, and I certainly don't believe it now. Yasmina had an obsession with burning this damn sandalwood incense. Drove me nuts. I hated the smell, but she claimed it helped her anxiety. And if she was anxious, she couldn't write. So I allowed it. We needed to pay rent after all. I smelled... Oh my gosh, I'm backing up my brain. Back then, she would allow it because they needed rent. Now, I started smelling it all over the apartment again. Not like how it usually wafted around for a few days after she burnt a whole stick, but like there was a stick actively smoking in the apartment. The first time I tore the place apart, seeing if I missed any of the incense, but nope. I had tossed it all out with the rest of her garbage. Denial was still my only refuge. I didn't believe in ghosts. Ghosts weren't real. And if they were, why would Yasmina be haunting me? It wasn't my fault she died, not really. She fell down the stairs. It wasn't like I shot her or stabbed her. As for using her stories, well, at least they were still getting out there. She should be happy that they didn't die with her. But I was wrong. I was lying to myself. It might have been an accident that Yasmina died, but it wasn't an accident that I stole her stories. After I got the third stolen story published, After I got the third stolen story published, I woke up in the middle of the night. I couldn't breathe. It was even a struggle to open my eyes. Yasmina was standing above me, her hands on my throat. She looked so hateful, so enraged. I'd never seen such a horrible expression on her face before. I tried to struggle, tried to scream, but her fingers just dug into my neck even more. Then I really woke up. It was almost 3 a.m., and I was alone. My neck hurt like hell, but there was not a sign of Yasmina. Thank you, yes. I still need to post the artist of that. I headed to the bathroom, and I nearly passed out when I saw my reflection in the mirror. Bruises, clearly from a person's hands, around my neck. For a second, I thought I saw Yasmina behind me, a dark grin on her face. I spun around and she was gone. She wasn't there when I looked at my mirror again, but the bruises were there. I wore a turtleneck when I went out that week. I didn't want any weird questions. It was really hard to explain why it looked like someone tried to choke me to death. I don't think she intended on killing me, though. She just wanted to show she could. Visions of Yasmina followed me everywhere. I nearly wet my pants when I was out with my friends getting coffee, and I saw Yasmina at another table, staring at me unblinkingly. It was obvious I was freaking the hell out because one of my friends joked about me seeing a ghost. I managed to pass it off as something else, but Yasmina was still there, still staring, still wanting to strangle the life out of me. I had to stop going out after a while, other than going to work. Of course, Yasmina followed me out there, but I had to keep paying the bills, and her writing wasn't cutting it yet. I think my boss knows I'm seeing things because the number of times I say, "What would you like to order?" and then realize it was just Yasmina standing in front of my register again was absurd. No one else ever saw her. Yasmina was only for my eyes because I was the one who stole her stories. I don't know how I lasted almost 3 weeks seeing Yasmina wherever I looked. When I went up to get a cup of coffee, Yasmina was there, leaning up against the fridge with a scowl, twisting her lips down. When I went to bed, she was in the corner, and I'd hide under the covers like a little kid, hoping that the blanket would be a shield to protect me. When I went to pick up groceries, Yasmina was walking by my cart, somehow avoiding running into other customers or shelves, but never taking her eyes off of me. Even when I was fucking taking a shower, I'd see her shadow behind the curtain. Thank God she was always gone by the time I'd ripped the curtain open. I'd never have any time alone. If I did, it was just a few blessed moments. Moments where I thought this torture was finally over with. that Yasmina had finally fucked off to heaven or hell and left me alone. But she'd be back, still staring, still seething with barely held back rage. I finally snapped yesterday. I'd finally gone a whole work day without seeing her. I thought that maybe, finally, I was free from her haunting. Then I got home, and I saw her at my computer desk. She stared at my screen, where another of her stolen stories was up. I'd found a magazine that loved the synopsis, so I intended on sending it in that night. She wasn't angry now. She was sad. She looked broken. Then she looked back up at me and her face contorted with rage again. I was done. I was so tired. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't enjoy a meal in peace. She was always lurking. She was dead. Leave me alone. Somehow my neighbors didn't react to my absolute meltdown. I threw things at her. I screamed in her face. I begged her to just leave me alone. She didn't react. The lamps and books I pitched at her just went right through, like she wasn't even there. She just stared at me and kept staring. Finally, I collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath. The apartment now looked like a tornado went through it. I finally asked her what I should have asked her days ago. What do you want? Why won't you leave me alone? I blinked, and suddenly Yasmina was standing above me. She clasped my face in her ice-cold hands. For a second I thought she might have mercy on me, that she might forgive me. Then her fingers clawed my cheeks open, ripping through skin and flesh like butter. I fell back to the ground, my face a bloodied mess as Yasmina stared at her bloody hands. She grinned, and for the first time since she started haunting me, she made a sound. She giggled. She giggled like a fucking maniac. And then she vanished. I know she's behind me. She seems to enjoy being just in the corner of my eye now, so when I whip around and look around, I just look crazy. It's not like she can't kill me whenever she wants. She's waiting. I'm trying to make it right now. I've already pulled all of her stories, making up excuses about other promises. I've pissed off the one podcast I've been working with, but I don't care. I don't care if I ever get published ever again. I think it's safe to say I'll never be writing ever again. I've done everything I can, but it's not enough. Yasmina is still there, waiting. I hope this confession will be enough to make it right. If it's not, I guess she's just waiting for me to finish making amends before she finishes what she started. I am a thief and a murderer. I killed Yasmina Abel and I stole her stories, and I'm so sorry. The end. But wow. Okay, Cage Nightwind has a comment. I know this is silly for such a serious and dark story, but make you... yeah. Probably, if someone's going through this is their own mental breakdown and their own guilt. But I guess the proof in things, of course, is that she really... I think the... Andrew Thames, so this character, he had the bruised neck, so I guess that's the proof and all that. Hey, Dum-Da, there you are, waiting on you. It was just a little while, I told you before. I told you I'd be back. I wanted to do like a quick stream early as well, but I had issues. And evidently the stream crashed within the first little bit before I came back. Oh, did you ever see Candle Cove? Sorry, just saw that one. No, and I don't know what it is, but I'll write it down. You missed... Thank you. I miss streaming. I missed all y'all. I'm glad I'm back. And the Spooky Stories time has been interesting. It's been a lot. Okay. The other news is that we have the. Ooh, yes. Go ahead. We can read that one if you'd like. We have Discord now that's pinned. Vetster did a great job. And I'm doing spooky afternoons and fairy tale evenings for the next little while. To people who live. You've been talking a lot, haven't it? I mean, I've been reading for an hour and 40 minutes when I haven't been doing long reads like I did before. Yeah, I guess so. That's fair. I don't do the viewing as much. OMG, it's here too. The Discord? Yes, we have it. So the link you have looks like it's just. Is it intentional to be? So this looks like it's just a little back and forth about a kid's show, or is that the like frame of the story to read out each quote unquote comment? Okay, cool. Then I'll do that like that. No need. We'll see you when you see you, and then the VODs will be up when they're up. You'll have it all. But okay. And this is a different archive collection of stories. That's cool. I like that. Alright. Then I guess we'll do this Candle Cove next. I'll just write everything out. The only bit that, like, obviously made it less convincing is that underneath there's 48 comments for this entry, and it looks completely different, right? And they, it's modern formatting for that, so there's photos with it too, and the little timestamps on everything. But the old one, yeah. But cool. Okay. We're gonna put the stuffs on the thing. Alright, Cage Nightwind, and I'll be streaming again tonight. It'll be fairy tales, less spooky, and I'll have the trigger list for people too. So you can join that or watch that VOD later. And okay. Candle Cove, recommended by DewOnTheGrass. It doesn't have the author here because it's just a different way that this one works, but okay. I'll read out each of the entries with their names. The first entry is Sky Shale 033. Oh, by Chris Straub. There you go. Thank you. Sky Shale 033 says, subject, Candle Cove Local Kids Show, ? And everybody else is the same thing underneath. Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 72. Oh, sorry. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. Mike_painter65 then says, "It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove, was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl." And Sky Shale comes back, "Yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, really low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll, looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though." Jaren 2005 then says, "Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean, Sky Shale. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I can remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughing Stock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was Calliope music constantly playing. I don't remember the girl's name, Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice." Skyshell replies, "Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughing Stock and Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden/plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked." I'm going to check out Ed Wynn. Mike Painter comes back. "Haha, I remember now too." Little smiley emoji that looks kind of funny, maybe winking. "Do you remember this part, Skyshell? You have to go inside." Skyshell says, "Oh, Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside," with his two eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh. It just looked so cheap and awful. Do you guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin_Hart then replies. Anyway, I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when this show was on, Nightmare Fuel. Jaren replies, "That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he had only one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch back then." Thanks, Dum Dub. Kevin Hart replies, "Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. What kind of a kid show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings, just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape, and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty." Skyshell says, "Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be children's skin? Mike Painter says, yeah, I think so. Remember, his mouth didn't open and close. His jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, why does your mouth move like that? And the skin taker didn't look at the girl but at the camera and said, to grind your skin. Skyshell says, I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had, where the opening jingle ended. The show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically and all screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. Kevin Hart says, I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. Skyshell says, no, not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place crying and screaming for the whole show. Kevin Hart says, maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you just said that, but I swear to God, I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Jaren says, oh God, yes, the little girl, Janice. I remember seeing her shake, and the skin taker screaming through his gnashing teeth. His jaw careening so wildly, I thought it would come off its wire hinges. I turned it off, and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother, and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. Mike Painter comes back. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and she remembered a kids show, Candle Cove. And if she remembered the kids show. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why, and she said, because I used to think it was so strange that you said, I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove now, Mom. And then you would tune the TV to static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show. The end. That's the end of that little thread story. But that's fun. That's creepy. I like it. Gonna put this down. Yeah, super fun. I wasn't expecting it to have been dead air at all. I was kind of starting to see we all remember it and it was a dream, but like something was wrong. I was kind of expecting it to go towards like someone in the thread was part of it, or someone, was more physically connected, and then they were all just dreaming the same thing kind of thing came on. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Crazy. All right. I never put the little now reading. I had the thing ready. I didn't even notice that I didn't transition it over. See, I wrote it out. We did read Candle Cove, but now I'll remove it because we have to move on to the next story. Oops. Okay. Oh, I made the chat invisible. That's not what I wanted invisible. Okay. Oh, cool. Like the Candle Cove or the thread? That'd be interesting. I might need to Google that. What happened to Candle Cove? If it's just dead air, I'm gonna want to virtually smack you. DewOnTheGrass. Okay. Adios, Cage Nightwind. We'll see you another time. I need to do a little adjust, but I'm still here. No. The illusion was broken. I saw my avatar move when the lag. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, that must be it. Okay. Okay. So it follows Mike Painter. That's interesting. We don't start with Sky Shale or whoever. And then okay, so it is kind of more following the thread in a sense than or it is the thread, not the show that they made. Because I thought it would be funny if sci-fi just like made a kid show that was just unhinged. 6 episodes of just weird little puppet man, and then the last one being all that screaming bit. That would be the finale. Because that would be something. It's a choice. I would have expected that kind of thing on like Adult Swim, not sci-fi, but yeah. Okay. So the next Creepypasta one random is Deep Dark Sea. Interesting. Yeah, DewOnTheGrass, if you can pop that into the Discord, that's probably a cool move. Make sure people actually check out that weird thing. Okay. Here we go with Deep Dark Sea by Kyle Harrison. This is another one taken as, or written as their recordings that you get access to. Yeah, Adult Swim is kind of like where they host all of the adult, mostly animation, but ridiculous things like Family Guy and all of the spin-offs of that, Archer, Robot Chicken, that stuff. Yeah, it's fun. It's ridiculous often and a bit gory sometimes. The Discord, I believe Fetster pinned it. I see it's in the chat. You might be able to get that. Repost it. Okay. Let's see. I don't know if that works. Yes, it did. Okay. I still had it on my clipboard. I hadn't copied anything else since posting that earlier. Perfect. Alright. Yeah, I know it's not everywhere, but they're fun. Okay. To Deep Dark Sea. I am recording this message to sort out my thoughts and provide the most accurate information I can to those on the surface. I apologize if it is not the most cohesive possible. Given the circumstances I am facing, it is the best that I could do. There are about 4 reasons why I'll be dead by the time this reaches anyone. Number 1. I have 47 hours of oxygen left. There is no way to stretch that out. Trust me, I have tried. When this mess started, I had about a week's worth of supplies left. I knew that conserving energy would be a top priority. I closed off parts of our facility I wasn't going to use, ran everything on the minimum power required. I did everything by the book to make sure I could survive, and it's probably only shaved off a few hours for me. I don't know what day it is, but I'm sure that it's my last or close to it because I don't see myself just sitting around and waiting to suffocate. You come to terms with your mortality down here pretty quick. I know I'm a goner, but that isn't really what scares me. Number 2. I'm at the bottom of the ocean and no one knows I'm here. For security reasons, none of us were allowed to know the base's location before we got here. At the time, I didn't question it. Government officials always like to keep secrets, and I figured that if it was at the bottom of the ocean, there wasn't much that could go wrong. It seemed like we would be safe. They even had a lot of rules and security measures that we reviewed before the deep dive to make sure we all understood what we were getting into. They hid everything. All I'd been initially told was that 6 of us would be sent to one of the most important projects of this century, and that the reward would be beyond measure. Not just money, although they did offer plenty. Fame and fortune, your name going down in history books. It was a hard thing to turn down, especially when the mystery itself intrigued me. I hadn't even been told who would be on the team, only that secrecy and duty would be the top priority. When things started going wrong, naturally, I asked the others to see if anyone knew our location to get help, but those in charge felt it would be better if we were all on the same page. Or the other 5 that came here were lying. I guess it doesn't matter now, though, since they are dead, does it? Yeah, that ties me into reason number 3. Number 3, all my crewmates are dead. Several of them I killed by my own hand. I haven't the time to explain, and I'm not asking for forgiveness or some shit like that. The men and women stationed here with me went crazy. They turned on one another like vicious animals, and everything I did was purely for survival reasons only. I don't want to go into the details of what I did. I still can't come to terms with those choices myself. These people were all good, smart, resourceful from every corner of the globe. None of them needed to be locked down here with this madness. When I ended their life, it was a mercy. At least that's what I tell myself. You see, we found something we weren't meant to here in the depths of the ocean. It was the entire reason that we came here. I remember thinking that our instruments weren't working properly during the dive. The oceanographer, Paul Stratton, commented that the electromagnetism of the region was off the charts. What did that mean? I asked. He winked at me and told me that it meant this was something big. Given the lack of light and life, the abyssal zone, one of the darker regions of the deep ocean, is where I figured we must be stationed. But I soon found out the reason for the void was far more serious than that. Commander Michael Watley met us at the main decompression chamber to go over a few regulations for our stay. No communication with the surface. The monitoring station was to remain online at all times. Shifts to keep everything maintained would be determined in 12-hour increments. Dr. Agnes Booth, our chief physician, was the first to ask the big question. You make it sound like you have uncovered extraterrestrial life, Commander. What exactly is it we will be researching? Michael showed us to the observatory deck, allowing the underwater floodlights beyond the deep ocean facility to activate and giving us all a chance to be in awe. According to the initial scans, it rested about 3,700 meters away from our location and still the object was massive from this range. Its edges touched the trench walls, making it feel almost purposeful that the object had been placed here in this remote location. Its hull was as white as ivory, unblemished and glistening across the entire surface. It did not indicate life, nor makeup that told me it was artificial. Yet, as the light refracted and hit it, I could tell that it wasn't truly a solid mass at all, but rather thousands or maybe millions of prisms that were all shimmering and moving in unity with one another to make up the object. It was at least the size of a 40-foot skyscraper. This is what... Maybe they think 40 stories, because 40 foot... Anyway, this is what all of you are here to find out. For the next 7 days, this monolith is your only priority. This facility has come equipped with everything you will need to safely observe, document, and record anything surrounding this trench, Michael told us. All of us were obviously surprised that the previous teams hadn't made any sense of the strange object, but the commander had an explanation for that too. Until recently, we have been unable to allow any person into the facility for fear of disruption. The monolith seems to harm the area surrounding it, but it also tends to wane during the summertime, almost as if it's asleep or hibernating. This is the best chance we have to understand the thing, he explained. He paused for a moment to see if there were any interjections, and then explained how our mission would conclude. After 7 days, a reconnaissance team will dive to get you and to determine if further observations are made, Watley told us. Paul couldn't help but to wonder if maybe the death trap we were observing might wake up. The commander didn't answer that one, but instead rattled off a few other rules as he prepared for departure and finally concluded. I know all of you were chosen because you are the most capable men and women we have available. I have full confidence you can crack this. And we never saw him again. Number 4. There is a force at work here that could destroy all life as we know it. It doesn't take all of us to recognize that this thing cannot possibly be from this world, I stated once the commander had left and the reality of our bizarre assignment sunk in. We began reviewing what little data the last team had managed to scrounge so far. The monolith was composed of literally hundreds of different geological sources as far as we could tell. None of us understood at first how that could be possible. The data showed that the scraps of rock had been gathered from every ocean on Earth. It's very beautiful, I admitted as I looked toward the darkness above. We couldn't even truly see the top of the monolith because of how down we were. The doctor said it was an abomination. It was no wonder why they kept this quiet, I thought. This thing was changing everything we ever thought we knew. And it could cause disruptions in space and time, too, from the data we expunged. Whatever the hell that meant. Okay, so it could cause disruptions in space and time, too, from the data we expunged, whatever the hell that meant. Watley told us that we would be fine, so that's what we are going to rely on, I repeated. He seemed fine, didn't he? Paul asked nervously. None of us knew the man that well, but it wasn't ours to decide. But soon enough we found out just how safe we really were. A few days passed with few incidents. We did our best to work under the circumstances we had been given and slowly became comfortable around the monolith. It was the sense of familiarity, I think, that led to the first mistake. Mason attempted to send a drone out to get a closer view of the prisms and had the camera feed on live so everyone on the facility could get a better look. But the closer the tiny submarine got to the object, the more erratic our feed became. We tried to write it off as faulty tech, but there was a growing unease amid the what does that mean? But something was beginning to change in my coworkers at that moment. Strange noises were emitting from the drone's feed. And I could already tell it irritated Paul and Dr. Booth. Paul claimed it was so bad he wanted to rip his ears off. Liza ignored it and pushed forward. We soon found what seemed to be writings on the prisms, different languages. Alien, I had guessed. Instead, the answer was actually what turned out to be the most curious. The scan detected over 400 spoken dialects from our planet. All of these languages appeared to be human. Some were ancient, Mesopotamian, Enochian, but some appeared to be far more modern. Like the rocks, it had gathered pieces of our culture for as long as it had been down there. That seemed like the logical conclusion, but I wasn't sure. Something about the stone seemed to have adapted since we got here. It was altering its makeup to show us things that hadn't been seen before. It made me worry about why that was. Wasn't the obelisk supposed to be asleep? Some of the noises might be tongues that we don't recognize. Language of the future, I speculated that evening as we listened to the chatter that the radio picked up. There did seem to be a rhyme to the broadcast method, but I wasn't sure I was ready to accept the notion of time travel. Maybe this monolith didn't exist within the framework of the dimensions we were familiar with. It was almost like an informational black hole. Time and space seemed to be meaningless to it. So it could have easily been gathering data from all over the entire span of human history. Our astrophysicist appeared too soon to give his theory about the subject. Why is he too soon? Something in his stance and posture seemed off, but for some reason I ignored it. The proper theoretical term is a white hole. Instead of consuming all things, including light, this monolith exudes constant power, information, and strength. It's an infinite chasm of possibilities, Gregory explained. So if we could tap into understanding it, we would be basically breaking the very fabric of our reality? That didn't sound good to me. He took a sip of his coffee, a strange glint in his eyes as he peered toward the monolith. Its very existence is the rip between our world and one beyond. It has pushed the limits. Now we are just teetering the scales forward toward oblivion. All right, maybe we shouldn't be all doom and gloom, I suggested. You don't understand, do you? This thing can see the future, the past, and the endless possibilities of the universe. It is everything. It's a god. And yet we stand here trying to comprehend it. That's like looking at the sun, he sneered. None of us have been affected yet, I said. No, but I knew that wasn't entirely true. Paul had been staying up to attempt to communicate with the noises, and Liza hadn't gotten much sleep. I tried to tell Greg that it was fine, we weren't losing sanity. No, you idiot, it's worse than that. The monolith is going to exert power over us. It's only a matter of time before we turn on each other, Greg said. The next day he locked himself in his room, and I had to kill my closest colleague on this wreck. I felt my breath hitting my face as I ran down the corridor from her. She had lost her mind because of a singular exertion using a pressurized suit to the monolith, gone for a few hours. Excursion, not exertion, sorry. When she returned to the main air chamber, she began speaking nonsense in tongues that we couldn't understand. Paul refused to let her on board. She used her own suit as a weapon, banging the helmet against the glass until it shattered. Blood and pain and endless walls, they rise, walk, scream, and crawl. Into the abyss they scurry, she shrieked, as she came toward us like an animal. I found a nook to hide in as she clawed at Paul's face. His screams prompted me to try and stop this, using the nearby fire extinguisher as a weapon to bash her head on the metallic floor. When she was dead, Booth performed an autopsy. trying to comprehend what had happened. This is the answer that the doctor gave us. Her brain and body were accelerating through different quantum states, almost as if she couldn't exist in our dimension anymore. Paul mumbled an excuse of how he had warned all of us to not go near the thing. Speaking of the monolith, since Liza's untimely death, it seems to have gotten larger, Greg told us. We decided to try and communicate with the surface after that, but it proved to be a pointless effort even with our skills. Time wasn't on our side, and we were too far down. Paul seemed determined to make it work, locking himself in the communication tray. And it needs an ad to run, so I'm going to run an ad quickly. I'm sorry. We're just going to do that so that it doesn't forcibly interrupt later on. There was like asterisks separating this, so we'll just use that little break. We've lost Liza. Greg locked himself in his room. Paul didn't like it. Paul and Liza had the noise issues. Ooh, good. Enjoy the D&D. And our main guy used a fire extinguisher to get rid of Liza because she was violent and concerning. Interesting time. Enjoy your D&D. We'll see you another time. Okay. And the ad is ending. So, here we go back in. The next day, I started to learn that I was not immune to the grip of the monolith. I was having hallucinations. It would often be Liza, her skin rippling and transforming on the edge of my mind even as I walked down the corridor and tried to perform the simplest task. She was always in constant pain, screaming about her suffering. It was the same hallucinations that made me kill Branch next. Whoever Branch is. The illusions mixing with the facility around me when I bashed his head in. Then I went to the forward command center and glared at the monolith. It was a reminder to me that I was being watched. The chances of escape without being caught were less than nil. Agnes met me there with an unusual request. She said she wanted me to kill her. What? I whispered in shock. I know you've been struggling with your mental health, we all have, and I want to end it on my terms. If I die, it will be easier for the rest of you to survive longer. It's simple math. I don't have anyone on the outside to wait for. Nobody will miss me, she insisted. This is how it has to be. I think most people believe death is easy. For her, it wasn't. She choked on her blood for maybe 15 minutes when I cut her throat. As I watched her die, gag, and struggle to breathe, I wondered if she changed her mind about this, about all the sacrifices that led her here. Jeez, you couldn't have picked a faster way to die than frickin'... Oh my god. Okay, fine. Oh gosh. I don't like this. I am now at the assumption that this narrator is unreliable. I should have told her I never intended to cannibalize her body. The truth is, I will kill the others and then commit suicide. I know that I can't let the research we have found come to light. The monolith is too dangerous. 7 days have passed since then. Paul wound up starving in the communications room. What about Greg? Oh no, there he is. On day 5, Branch and I found his body and saw that he had carved more strange, archaic symbols in his own blood on every surface. The monolith was trying to tell him something. The way he said more, did something get cut? Part of the story get cut? I don't know. The monolith was trying to tell him something, Gregory whispered. Since when are you not locked in your room? What could it be? I asked. He turned to me and whispered the final reason why I knew I would die down here. We aren't alone. Greg's body began to break apart the way a cocoon splinters the moment of metamorphosis. But this was not a beautiful, godly creature emerging. What happened to Greg? What was going on? I don't understand this. Long black skeletal claws crushed apart his skin, and muscle revealed rows of endless teeth and eyes as the hellish abomination screamed in a million tongues. I locked myself in the next room, the creature smashing its body to reach me over and over as I frantically worked to cause an implosion in the room. When it succeeded, I saw the creature tear apart into another 1,000 pieces, joining the ocean's vacuum as it was forced into the monolith. This is fun. Yeah. The object is all-encompassing now. I see it everywhere I look. I know that the forces from beyond are closing in. They taunt me with their screams as I struggle to finish these notes. I have discovered the horrible truth. This monolith did not come from Earth, but from what came before our world. An entire dimension of chaos and destruction is what it harbors. Our days as the dominant species in this world have come to an end. The truth is that this was never our world to begin with. All this time, the monsters and the hell that rests beyond the gates of reality have only been hibernating. The monolith is the key to their world, and something is about to unlock it. I'm thankful I'm about to die now. I can't even imagine the apocalypse that will rain down when this thing finally chooses to stir the world above. Okay. The end. There you go. Just like skimmed it back over because like weirdness. That one was very interesting. That one was intense. I think there was like a little bit of funkiness, but it wasn't much. It's just like the way that it was written was meant to be a little bit disconnected. Like I think it was about having an unreliable narrator. Because he was weird. Okay. Yay, clap, clap. Thank you. I missed that one. Okay. Fun story. Alright. We're probably only gonna have one more. But I'm going to... What do you guys mean? I'm a little curious. What do you mean? Something pop on the screen? I moved my avatar around. Oh yeah. No, the narrator, like, it felt like something got cut. Oh. That's weird. I don't know why an exclamation mark window would pop up. What would that be? I didn't see that. I had moved my avatar around a little bit. Oh no. Okay. I'll be right back. I will be right back. I'd had a very sudden interruption, and I'm sorry for that. But we are back. I'm still confused what that banner would have been. Ooh. Oh, what's this? Is this another story, DewOnTheGrass? Do you want this to be our final story? I was just about to get to what the final story would be. I think another recommendation from you isn't a bad idea at all. Ah. I don't know what you guys are talking about with this. 20 seconds of static now? What the hell happened? And okay, this is a SCP thing. I have been told that this is something that often gets requested, and here it is. I think we will read this. I'll just put this up. I have no idea. I literally do not know what happened. You say static, you say a white exclamation banner. Weirdness. Okay. Anyway. Let's do this. Alright. This might not be our last one because it's not all that long, but here is SCP-1707, I guess. It's clickable now? What the hell does that mean? Do not burn your kitchen, Tego, please. Don't do that. Yeah, please. Lot going on with you guys. What's going on? Okay. Alright, I'll read this. We'll go through this one. This is an interesting recommendation. I don't fully know what this will be. But okay. Link is in the chat, but here's the next story. I'll never know what that weirdness was or what happened with it, but if it ever happens again, let me know, guys. Item number SCP-1707, Object Class Euclid. Special Contamination Procedures. Each SCP-1707 colony is to be kept in a monitored containment cell under biosafety level 3 conditions. Oh, hey, bye! We're just starting with an SCP. I think it's my first SCP. Oh, my boss called me and I just forgot it there. 40 minutes later, my father came in and screamed to me a little. I'm sorry someone came in and screamed to you, but, yes, please don't, burn your house down. And yeah, but we just had a really weird thing where I guess there was static or this white banner with an exclamation point. I don't know. I didn't see it. They saw it. Ugh. But yeah. Yes. Remember the stovetop? Be careful. Everyone say hi to Vi. I'm gonna keep reading the SCP. Yes, they have me on these now. Alright. Recommendation from DewOnTheGrass today. Alright. Keep it in under biosafety level 3 conditions. A minimum of 2 mature and stable colonies hosted by domestic pigs, sus domesticus, are to be retained at all times. At least one additional colony is to be maintained for the purpose of experimentation. Humans are not to be used to host SCP-1707 colonies without the approval of both the senior researcher and the site director. Ooh, this sounds very weird. Well, occasionally, if you need to do something, it's okay to go do that. I've got thoughts. You know, you can look after your rest of your life too. But I'm glad you're here when you can be. All right. In the event of a containment breach by an unhosted colony, all personnel save the duty biothreat recontainment team are to evacuate the area. A suitable host organism is to be used by the duty team to lure the colony back into containment. If a hosted colony breaches containment, standard protocols for the host species shall be in effect. Under no circumstances are any SCP-1707 colonies to be terminated without explicit written approval from the senior researcher. Okay, glad it's not anything pressing. I don't think they were trying to commit arson. I think it was more like, oops, we did something wrong, and it almost made arson. Almost made fire. Not arson. Okay, description. SCP-1707 is a type of collective organism composed of a mass of creatures individually designated as SCP-1707-A that resemble various different annelids and helminths. In particular, all SCP-1707-A specimens are between 50 and 30 millimeters in length and possess distinctive mouth parts. See attached image. I call bullshit. There was no attached image. In isolation, SCP-1707 forms a flattened mass up to approximately 4 to 5 centimeters thick. A colony in this state will conserve movement until it detects a suitable host, at which time it will begin to move up to 0.5 meters per second toward its target. Considering it's so small, that's pretty speedy. SCP-1707 colonies consistently prefer sapient targets. Studies seem to understand these mechanisms are ongoing. There is a footnote number 1. Research has shown detection range to be a function of size of target with a maximum effective range of approximately 700 meters. Tetrahedron. Yeah, that would be funny. No, I am not whatever these thingies are. That would be freaking weird. But okay, so that footnote was just to basically agree that they be speedy, and that if you're within 700 meters, they could be going after you. Which is freaking insane for a teeny tiny thing. The first few SCP-1707-A to contact the host epidermis, will administer a fast-acting paralytic agent via their mouthparts. That was supposed to be in the photo. And then it has footnote. Human hosts report that this agent rapidly and totally inhibits voluntary movement for a period of at least 15 minutes. There is no associated anesthetic effect, so you still feel, but for 15 minutes you can't move. Yeah, this thing is freaking, whatever this things is, it be speedy, it be effective, it be insane. Okay. Each SCP-1707-A creature will then seek out epidermal tissue to burrow through and consume before anchoring themselves into the host's dermal layer. The rest of the colony will follow suit, consuming approximately 20 centimeters squared of skin per second until the target's entire epidermal layer has been replaced by a dense covering of SCP-1707. Does that mean that these things can look like skin, or does it look like a weird furry thing? I don't know what this means. That's really creepy. Anyway, this process may only be interrupted by destruction of unattached portions of the colony. Ooh, okay. When established on a host, SCP-1707 demonstrates no anomalous secondary effects. For the host, secondary physical effects of increased nutrition requirement and a higher chance of transdermal infection manifest as expected. Yeah, you're more likely to get infection when your skin is no longer protecting you, and it's these things, and they're eating you, so they need new food. These factors tend to lead to the host's lifespan being comparatively short. Thank you, DewOnTheGrass. They're segmented worms. So yeah, it would be messed up worm skin, kind of messed up hair. Yeah? It would look like hairish if you're worms. Yeah, you would need your own spacesuit to get through this. To prevent this. Under controlled conditions, however, hosted SCP-1707 colonies can be kept alive and healthy for an extended period. Upon the death of a host, SCP-1707 enters its reproductive stage, rapidly consuming soft tissues of the corpse. During this stage, individual SCP-1707-A specimens will reproduce in a manner similar to that of known species they resemble, albeit at a greatly accelerated rate. So, like worms, is that what you're saying? The whole process leads to the colony roughly tripling in size. As such, the new iteration is capable of attaching itself to larger host organisms. At the time of writing, several infestations are maintained. SCP-1707-0 and SCP-1707-1, 2 domestic pigs. SCP-1707-2, 1 white-tailed deer. -3 is Cape buffalo. -4 Norwegian rat. -5 human, formerly Agent Redacted, infested by SCP-1707 during initial discovery and containment, and -6-XXXIV Roman numerals, that's 24, sorry. 1 human D-class infested subsequent to containment. So what does D-class mean? What's a D-class of human? Is this supposed to be, like, why are humans classed? Is this, I don't know this whole world, so I don't know what this thing is. Anyway, if you know, drop that. There is no known way to cure or mitigate an SCP-1707 infestation. Any attempts at forced removal result in the death of the host within 5 hours, regardless of medical treatment. Death row inmates? Ugh, that's awful. But okay. Moving along. I don't like this foundation. You die within 5 hours regardless of medical treatment. The reason for this are a subject of ongoing study 3. For more details, see document SCP-1707-6-E, experiments 1 through 23. So they've done a whole heckin' bunch of these. The current person alive is 24, as we confirmed. Seething. Okay. Note, due to the psychological effect of SCP-1707 infestation on a human host, any such hosts are to be continuously monitored to reduce the chance of unauthorized termination. Ethics Committee, Level 3 and above only. And then the rest of the footnotes that are not directly tied to the article, I guess. While still a field agent, researcher DeMacchio served as a team leader in Agent Blank's MTF Theta 90 brackets, quote, angle grinders for a period of 5 years. I don't know what that means. Oh, I click on that? Oh, okay. I'll go do that. Access granted. File SCP-1707-5-B7 proceed. Selected excerpts for the -5 post-containment interviews. So remember, -5 is the redacted agent. Okay. 1. Time since infestation, 1 day. Interviewer, researcher, DeMacchio. And then that's the footnote we just had. Well, there's a lot more. And so this person, DeMacchio, they were serving for 5 years looking after this agent, I guess. I don't know what MTF in this context means. I don't know what Theta 90 angle grinders means, but here we are for the excerpts of this. Mobile Task Force. Okay. Intriguing. Alright. So then DeMacchio says, "Hey, blank. It's Paul. Can you hear me? This thing working?" He asks agent name again. Agent says, yeah, I can hear you. DeMacchio says, "So I heard what happened. I had to come right over here. They won't fucking let me in, though. You know how it is." There's a pause, and the agent says, "Appreciate it, man." DeMacchio, "How do you feel?" No audio for several seconds. "Like I'm covered in freaking worms," agent says. DeMacchio, seriously, man, how do you feel?" Agent, I can't feel much on like where my skin used to be. Kinda numb. A pause. Agent, "How come I can still talk? They're not on my lips or nothing?" DeMacchio, They mostly left your mouth alone. We don't know why yet. Maybe because it's a different kind of skin." Agent says, "Why don't they get squished?" DeMacchio says, "Sorry, man." "What?" Agent says, "Like the ones on my back and shit. They don't get squished from lying on them." DeMacchio says, "Well, I don't know. I guess that's what we have to find out, right?" No audio for several seconds. Oh, and I guess we have a full... Yeah, it's Paul. Agent DeMacchio is Paul. "Paulie," agent says. DeMacchio says, "Yeah." Agent says, "Why don't they get squished?" And that's the end of that excerpt. Whether that means he's not remember things or not. After 1 week. This is excerpt 2. Time since infestation, 1 week. Interviewer is Dr. M. Zhao. Dr. Zhao, Agent blank? A pause. Dr. Zhao again. "This is Dr. Mei Zhao from the Biocon Analysis Group." Agent says, "Sure you ain't Jenny from the block?" Several seconds of Agent blank's laughter, and then a pause. Dr. Zhao. Sorry, just seeing Jim. They said it in brackets. I think that was like the name of the task force, maybe? I don't know. Dr. Zhao says, "I'm sorry, Agent blank. I'm afraid not." Agent says, "I bet you got some questions for me, huh? Now I turned into my very own Skip." Dr. Zhao, "Well, I do have some questions, but you should know that we haven't classified you personally as an SCP object." Agent says, "I knew that already. Know why?" There's a pause. Agent says, "I can read your mind now thanks to this shit." Dr. Zhao says, "Can you tell me And agent interrupts saying, "Geez, I'm just screwing with you." Several seconds of Agent Blank's laughter. Agent says, "Ah, geez. Okay, Doc, fire away." There's a pause. Dr. Zhao, "Okay, let's start with simple things. How's the temperature in here? Do you feel cool or warm right now?" Agent says, it's kinda... So, I mean, I can feel that, but it's all numbed. I don't get it, because when they were... There's a pause. When they got me, it sure as hell wasn't numb then. Dr. Zhao, "Can you feel? I mean, do you still have access to a sense of touch?" Agent says, "Kinda. Same thing, it's numb. I can still sort of feel something. I don't even feel anything much when I lie or walk on them." Pause. "So when are you gonna get these things off me anyway? Polly told me you were gonna work it out with some D's." Dr. Zhao says, "Well, we're getting there. We need more time to understand how to remove the infestation safely. I'm sorry it's not as fast as we'd like." No audio for several seconds. The agent says, "Yeah, well, yeah, you just keep trying though." No audio for several seconds. "You keep trying." 3. Time since infestation, 2 weeks. Back to interviewer, researcher P. DeMacchio. Paul DeMacchio. Agent says, "So I mean, it's been nice to get a freaking real bed in here, even though I can't really feel much difference." DeMacchio, "Glad you like it. I told him to give you a king size for your fat ass, but they wouldn't." Agent, "Ha." A pause. "Should be a lot fatter." DeMacchio says, "How do you mean?" Agent says, "You know how much I got to eat now?" DeMacchio says, "Something like blank or blank calories a day, right?" They redacted how many calories, but they have a footnote. It says, "At this time, researcher DeMacchio was acting project lead of experiment series SCP-1706E. SCP-1707-6-E. So that would be the Class D thing, I guess. Oh no, that was the next thing. Sorry, oops. Researcher DeMacchio designed Agent Blank's nutrition regimen." And then footnote 6 is that he's working on that at that time. So we're not at that time yet, but he will do that in future excerpt. But he did do the calorie. Okay. Agent says, "You know how much that is?" DeMacchio says, "Few days worth of field rations?" Agent says, "It's a fucking ton of food, even with all the high calorie shit they got me eaten. DeMacchio says, "Yeah, I guess it's 'cause of the skip." Agent says, "No shit, genius." There's a pause. "They figured out a way to get their shit off me yet?" DeMacchio, "Not yet, man. Sorry." Agent says, "How many D's they gone through?" There's a pause, and DeMacchio says, "I don't know." And they're referring to Class D's. Anyway, Agent says, "Yeah, I fucking bet you don't. Don't shit me, Polly. I know your ass." And this is where the footer 6 is. He says, "Seriously, Blank, I got no input into that." But obviously he does, and the agent calls him out. He says, "Whatever you say, man." At this time, he was working on that, so there you go. Excerpt 4. Time since infestation is 1 month. Interviewer Dr. M. Zhao. Zhao says, "Agent." No audio for several seconds. Dr. Zhao, "Agent, are you awake?" No audio for several seconds. Dr. Zhao, "Let the record show that Agent Blank appears to be asleep. This is the 3rd interview attempt in which he has..." An agent interrupts. "You know why I pretend to be fucking asleep?" Dr. Zhao, Agent interrupts. "Because, and I don't know if you Nobel Prize winners notice this, but fucking look at me. You assholes keep wanting to fuck with me, but it's as fucking simple as this. I got this shit instead of fucking skin. There's no other shit going on around here. How come you fucking geniuses can't figure that out? How come you can't just fucking take this shit off me and put some skin, some D class on me, from some D class on me, or fucking whatever? Dr. Zhao, well, first we have to make sure there are no secondary effects, and Agent interrupts. Yeah, well, how about this fucking secondary effect? I'm a fucking freak. Excerpt 5. Time since infestation, 6 months. This is Demacchio again. He asks the agent's name. No audio for several seconds. Agent says, skip dash 1707 dash 5. Demacchio says, what? Agent says, that's me now. That's me. SCP-17075. I heard some asshole calling me that the other day when they left the comm open on accident. Demacchio, bullshit. You're field agent blank blank from the fucking grinders. I don't give a fuck what those assholes think. And that's footnote 7. Researcher Demacchio was responsible for the classification SCP-1707 and subsequent designations of its experimental hosts. Just to say that he says that's bullshit, but he is the one that gave him that name. Why do these footnotes need to be so sassy? Jeez. Agent says, so, what are 1, 2, 3, and 4? Demacchio, oh, a bunch of animals. Listen, blank, we need. And Agent says, we need. Let me tell you something, Polly, and it's what I need. And what I need is for that fucking magical miracle fucking cure you assholes are working on to actually come true one of these fucking days. Except that's never gonna happen because 6 months like this and you're probably a lifer, right? Right? Stuck in this fucking cell forever, right? Because being fucking studied, long-term study, don't even shit me. Don't even try to shit me. I know how we fucking do things around here. How many D class? So pause. Evidently they do not. Demacchio says, listen, blank, it's... And he interrupts again. Agent says, how many D class? How many of them do we got in here with this shit on them? Why do we gotta keep me around? Demacchio says, come on, man. I told you this last time. We ain't got a way to remove it yet without killing you. No audio for several seconds. Agent says, yeah, I remember. There's a pause. Demacchio says, oh, come on. That ain't the blank. I remember. You... And he interrupts. Yeah, maybe that's because the fucking... His own name here. Remember, wasn't a fucking skit. Maybe that's because I never used to be a fucking freak. Get the fuck out of here. Stop bullshitting me. Get the fuck out. At this point, Agent Blank picks up a chair from his cell and attempts to strike Researcher Demacchio. Security rush into the cell. Researcher Demacchio exits the cell. And number 6. Oh, jeez, this one's tough. Okay. Time since infestation is 7 years. Interviewer is Dr. M. Zhao. Dr. Zhao. SCP-1707-5. This is Dr. Zhao. Can you hear me? No audio for approximately 30 seconds. Dr. Zhao. I'm not going to be here for long. I have just a few short questions. No audio for several seconds. Oh, and this time, that's why I thought it was weird. It doesn't have his name. It has SCP-1707-5, muffled, indistinct vocalization, and a pause. Dr. Zhao, first of all, have you noticed any change in sensation over the last 6 months? No audio for 30 seconds. Dr. Zhao says 1707-5. No audio for approximately 30 seconds. Dr. Zhao says, okay, have you experienced other effects of SCP-1707? Any other symptoms at all? SCP-1707-5, indistinct, unintelligible. Dr. Zhao says, I'm sorry, what was that? No audio for approximately 30 seconds. Dr. Zhao again. Okay. Okay, this interview is concluded at 15:44 local time on blank blank 20 blank blank. So this is telling us that it's within this century. That's fun. That's the next interview will be in 4, and then he interrupts. He says, "Where's Polly?" No audio for several seconds. He says, "I want Polly." And Zhao says, he transferred out. He transferred out 3 years ago. No audio for 2 minutes. Dr. Zhao sighs. Interview is concluded. Dr. Zhao leaves containment cell. And that's the last one there. That is awful in so many ways. I do not like the implications of this story. But okay, that's the SCPs. Wow. That is definitely our last one for tonight, though, because we are after when I usually wrap the afternoon stream early, and I did start early. Usually when I wrap the stream up, and I did start early. So I will be going now, but I'll be back in 3 hours. Jeez. And they lived happily ever after. No, they didn't, and you know that. I say afternoon, but I mean, yeah, anyway. The later stream starts in 3 hours. Less than 3 hours now. Yeah. And like I said, I'll be doing fairy tales tonight. I will have the ASMR triggers list up, and we'll be doing that again in between stories. Yeah, H-Night, when I did get that, the fact that they were all referred to like that means that there's a lack of individuality, which does suggest you're trying to distance yourself from the horrors, and that's no fun. It's midnight for you, cries. Well, it's a bit before midnight for me. I usually wrap. I'm usually in the middle of the evening stream, as I call it, at midnight. Let's not forget the toaster. Are you implying we take a toaster somewhere? Or are you referring to a story? I'm assuming it's a story, because I don't know that. Oh, jeez. Honestly, it's all good. I'm just like... It makes me sad because it's a reality, but that they would be using people that they would call Class D, or, like, it's unimportant that they die stuff. It just... heartbreaking. This is the first one I read. I have seen other ones, but I haven't actually read them. And it's the first one I read on stream, for sure. That's a reference to the Bravest Toaster thing, yeah. But yeah, okay, I will see any of you that show up later. We won't be doing creepy tonight. We'll be doing the Creepypasta stuff again, and you can hit me with all the SCP stories you want me to read for those. And I'll just like slightly change my trigger warning that they're SCPs, and I don't know how dark they'll be. But those fit perfectly for my spooky, as I'm calling it, streams. And yeah, I'll do more tonight. Well, then I'm very glad I'm back. Can't make it to the next one. Well, I do VODs. Like they'll be up on Twitch for a little bit, but then I also make sure that they are up on YouTube. In my little break, I'll be trying to update the emotes, put the Discord on my Twitch so that you guys can access it through there, and trying to scrape together things that are supposed to go in my about section, and eat, and, but we'll see what all I get done. Anyway, okay, I'll see you guys soon. Yeah, see you soon. Bye-bye for now.